Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Hi, I'm Duane Dubb. I am an adjunct instructor here at West Virginia University in the IMC program, and I am one of the instructors for the 636 capstone course. And what I want to share today is the cumulative experiences that I have brought to the university from my own career in integrated marketing. Most recently, 17 years at IBM, and before that I was with R.L. Polk and I did automotive direct marketing and integrated marketing for about 9 or 10 years, and some agency stuff and other stuff before that. But my background allows me to get a nice perspective on campaigns and what it takes to develop a good campaign. You heard a lot of really good stuff today. The opening speaker, Paul, really just bombarded you with a ton of very detailed information. I sat back there and I was having a hard time absorbing and capturing it all, so I can only imagine what it was like for you too. So what I want to do today is let me kind of set the stage for you and set your expectations. I don't have any videos. I don't have any fancy pictures. In fact, the pictures I have are really kind of crappy, but that's okay. Forgive me. Because I wanted to talk to you about some basics. Some basic IMC marketing information, strategy, knowledge that every good IMC practitioner needs to bring to the table when developing integrated marketing campaigns. And what I've been seeing in the marketplace today is a lot of really fun, creative tactics, but I don't know what they're doing. It's not clear what they're supposed to be doing, and I question whether the campaign itself is really properly designed. So what I want to share with you today is some insight that I have on what it takes to develop a really good campaign. So my agenda is to first say, why are some of these marketing campaigns that we see failing? I want to bring forward an approach that has worked. Maybe not necessarily in marketing, but an approach that worked. And then take some lessons from that and apply it to marketing so that we can make our campaigns work better. So first question, what's integrated marketing? Anybody? Oh wait, do we have any graduates here? Can anybody tell me what integrated marketing is?
Using multiple platforms of information across different types of media and integrating.
Multiple platforms, different tactics across multiple platforms, and then integrate it. So we're defining integrated with integrated. Okay, so maybe we need to revise that a little bit.
Consistent messaging across multiple platforms.
Consistent messaging across multiple platforms. Good. Who else?
I see consistent messaging through all marketing channels.
Consistent messaging through all marketing channels. Okay, good. Anyone else?
I would say consistent messaging through all channels and aspects of the company.
Consistent messaging across all channels and all aspects of the company.
Yes.
Okay. So, yes?
To achieve a common goal.
To achieve a common goal. Here's a new thought. Other thoughts? Well, you're all right. Kinda. Kind of, because I think that's part of what we've been seeing, is that integrated marketing has, well, if we look at what dictionary.com says, it says that integrated, which is the key word that we're really talking about, is combining or coordinating separate elements as to provide a harmonious, interrelated whole. That's kind of what most of you said, right? The messaging, whatever, it's combining and coordinating. So in my mind, the key phrases out of this are combining and coordinating separate elements. That's kind of what we see. So those who are going through integrated marketing here, or who are out in the field, there's a lot of different ways of presenting what it looks like, right? Let's take a look at some of them. Well, the first is nothing but noise. It's putting everything out there all at the same time, but making sure that the message is kind of the same. And maybe it's not kind of the same, but a lot of people, as long as we're doing everything at once, it's integrated. Kind of a mess. Another approach is, well, as long as we're talking through different media, that's integrated. And hopefully we're saying the same thing through integrated. A more common approach to integrated marketing is this traditional one. Lots of circles in a circle tied to the center being an integrated marketing campaign. But the problem was they're not tied to each other. So now we have a view where they're all tied to each other, but they're not tied to the middle. Every approach we're looking at is lacking something, it's missing something. Of course, you have the one where you have the client in the center, which is a wonderful thing to do, and then you have all the tactics coming in, but then you have these extra circles that talk about business strategy, integrated customer-centric thinking. I'm not quite sure where that fits in and how that affects tactics, but it's all part of it. People take different approaches, right? So let's get rid of the circles and have boxes. And let's tie the boxes together and make it a circle around the messaging, to your point of having a common message, right? Except the message isn't tied into any of these tactics. It's just they're circled by it. Here's a different approach. Bigger boxes, boxes within boxes. But now we have a little bit of a sequence going on from triggering and accessing and then engaging. So apparently there's some kind of structure there, but I don't know if that can be moved around or not. Or does this mean that only traditional media, PR, and social networks are triggers? That search and partnerships can't be a trigger? I don't know. Of course, it's a puzzle. And that's one way of looking at it, that's one way of presenting it. That integrated marketing is a puzzle. Except it's a bigger puzzle than that. It's a puzzle with a lot of different pieces. But this shows the pieces, the thing going together only one way. So, and it doesn't really show any kind of movement. Here, we're showing some movement. It's the idea of intertwining the tactics, intertwining the message, trying to put it together. So you have the traditional, the promotions, the web social. It's another way of showing it. Personally, the one that I think is the most creative, and you're more than welcome to copy it and use it in any of your presentations, is, it's the next one. To me, this is probably getting closer to where we want to go, because this kind of infers motion. It shows a lot of different tactics, a lot of different media, working together, but we don't really know what it's doing. Here's the one that I think is just phenomenal. I was stunned when I found it. I don't know why I never thought of this earlier, but this has got to be the best representation of integrated marketing I ever saw. It's fruit and vegetables in a pea pod. Figure it out. But that's what we're doing. So I don't know if we're farmers now or what. In my mind, what's missing, the fails that all of these schematics have, is that all of the elements are still independent of each other. There's no objective or goals illustrated in those schematics. The whole idea of consistent messaging is ignored except for the one, where it was tied back to the consistent messaging. It's an all or nothing viewpoint. You either have PR or you don't have PR. You either have traditional advertising or you don't. You either have social media or you don't. When you do have it, there's no sense of proportion or balance. How much television, how much PR, how much radio are we going to do? And more importantly, there's nothing there to kind of tie it together. So what's missing? In my opinion, what's missing from all of these, and a lot of times from our own thinking, is a campaign focus. And you say, well, that's integrated marketing. Integrated marketing is developing campaigns. So how can you not have a campaign focus when you're developing a campaign? Good question. Let's look at what it means to be a campaign. The word campaign is actually a military word that started in the 1640s. Came out of France, and the word is from campaign, which was a derivative of champagne. And champagne means open fields. And campaign was military maneuvers in open fields. And that's how the word campaign was developed. And then, as it grew and it took on a more structured meaning, the meaning keyed in on three specific things. That it was a systematic course of aggressive activities to a specific goal or end. And that is really how we understand a campaign today. But when you look at all the schematics of integrated marketing, none of them really show that aspect of what you do or what you're going to do or what you need to do for your bosses or your clients. And that's to put together a systematic course of aggressive activities for some specific purpose. So what examples of successful campaigns? Well, certainly the conquest of Gaul by Caesar, going back to history. The March across the Alps by Hannibal was a very successful campaign. The defeat of the Third Coalition by Napoleon, or the Mongol invasion of China by Genghis Khan. And let's not forget Alexander the Great. These were very, very successful campaigns, according to Google. Why? Why were these successful? Well, first and foremost, there were clear examples of systematic, aggressive activities towards a specific objective. Also, they had leaders who were visionaries and had goals. They knew where they wanted to go. They knew what they wanted to achieve. Secondly, they developed tactics that only outstanding planners could really put together. They understood the importance of setting objectives and how objectives supported goals. And thirdly, they knew how to have activities that would help them achieve those objectives. And in so doing, they were really masterminds of creating synergy, because everything worked together, and worked together overwhelmingly. That's why these were some of the greatest. So they created synergy. Synergy, as we know, is the interaction of elements that, when combined, produce a total effect that is greater than the sum of the individual elements or contributions. These leaders deployed the right elements at the correct balance in the right sequence. And isn't that what we're trying to do with our programs to make them successful? So if that's what they did, how do we take this approach, a very successful approach, and apply it to our marketing programs? What can we learn from that and specifically apply? Well, we need to start at the real core, and that's really what this presentation's about. It's not about the latest and newest tactics that are available and the latest media and apps and trying to come up with extremely unique tactics. It's putting together a foundation, a program, an outline that's going to ensure your success. Because no matter what you do, you will be judged on how successful your tactics and programs are, right? Somebody's going to judge you by it, even if it's only yourself. So these leaders, whether verbally or in their own mind, ask basically three questions before every campaign. What do I want to achieve? What will it take for me to do this? And what's the best way to do this? So let's kind of look at those three questions, what they did, and then the lessons that carry over to marketing and the way you build your plans. First of all, what do I want to achieve? That's a loaded question. I mean, it really is. It's one of the issues that I've seen in campaign development is the fact that the marketers and many times the management themselves don't know what they want to achieve. They will take an objective and call that a goal. They'll take a goal and think of it as a tactic. They don't know how to structure and set up a goal under which you have tactics. So these leaders had a clear goal to conquest a particular area. They identified the right objectives that would help them get to that goal. And those objectives were set up in a series, and they had priority, one before the other. And the leaders knew and understood and had the knowledge and the insight to be able to structure and set these up in a proper sequence. And they also knew their enemy. They knew their own army, but they also knew the enemy. They understood what the enemy was about, their thinking. So let's talk about the goal and the importance of that. The first example that I gave on great campaigns was Caesar conquering Gaul. Does anyone know why Caesar went out to conquer Gaul? It's 12th grade history, world history. Okay, I forgive you. I had to look it up too. Some people would say, well, there was a lot of gold being mined in France, and he wanted the gold to make himself rich. Other people would say that he wanted to expand the Roman Empire and become a hero. The fact of the matter is, Caesar was the junior partner of a leadership triumvirate in Rome. And he knew that the only way that he could become the sole emperor is A, he had a lot of money, B, he had the support of the army, and C, he came back as a conquering hero. So his goal was to become a sole emperor. His objectives were to conquer Gaul, take over the mines, have a successful conquest so that the army supports him and they got rich off of what he was doing, so that he could come back into Rome as a conquering hero, throw over the other two leaders in the triumvirate and become the sole emperor. That was his goal. The objectives that he set out were steps towards that goal. So what does this mean for us in the way we look at our campaigns? Well, first of all, we need to have the right goals and objectives. And this, for you, requires a lot of turmoil, a lot of discussion, a lot of insight, and maybe a lot of arguments with your management. But most importantly, it's a tremendous opportunity for you to help set the direction of your company, to understand what your long-term goal is. And long-term could be a year, it could be a 3-year plan, a 5-year plan. But only once you understand what that goal is can you set up proper objectives to achieving it. So you need to think long-term, but you also need to think short-term in terms of the steps that you need to put together. And then once you have those steps, you have to have some strategies for achieving them. We'll talk a little bit more about this as we go on. You need to know your audience. People in marketing, probably 85% of the time, if you ask them the question, do you know your audience? Do you know who you're marketing to? We'll say, yeah, we know. We have a pretty good idea of who our audience is. Have you done any research? No. Have you validated it? No, but we kind of know. What I'm saying is you need to know absolutely. And this is one of the things that Paul was talking about earlier too. There's a lot of ways to do the research. In the campaigns course, that's what the students are asked to do research on the target audience, to understand who they are, what makes them tick, what their fears are, what their motivations are, because that's what you got to play on. That's what you have to leverage. IBM, where I just recently retired from, in 2013 started a global initiative in marketing to create profiles. profiles of customers. Every brand and every product within each brand line was creating its own profile. Every industry team was creating profiles for the solutions they offered according to whom they were going to offer it. If it was an ERP system, it was at the vice president, the profile was vice president of marketing. If it was an accounting system for banking, it was the vice president of accounting. If it was logistics, it was the vice president of logistics. The profiles were intended to make sure that the marketing team really understood who they're talking to. Now you think, IBM, I mean, they've been doing this for years. If anybody's going to know, you would think they would. But the fact was, there's so many products, so many solutions being offered to so many different people, it wasn't clear who it was being targeted to. And they felt that in order to get our messaging right, we need to understand and draw a picture, a profile, of who our typical customer is. So profile might be, our vice president of logistics is 44 years old, married, typically married with 2 kids. He's been in this job for 5 years. He has a background of 20 years in logistics of some sort. He has a master's degree. And his biggest problems are how to manage this, how to take care of that, and the biggest challenges he has is this. So to be able to define that and have it on paper is something that you as marketers absolutely need to have. So what's an easy way to do it? You don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars to do research, right? Easiest way, call your salespeople. Yeah, it's have interviews with your salespeople. All it takes is 10 or 15. Put an hour aside, say, I'd like to talk to you about your customers. Can you tell me who your number one customer is? Describe him to me. What makes him tick? What's he afraid of? What keeps him up at night? Who's your competition at that customer? What is he pitching that we don't have? You take all that information, draw a profile, you do 10, 12 of these, and all of a sudden you start seeing a common picture of who your customer is. Now you have an understanding of who you're going to be going after and what's important to them. And then ultimately, of course, you need to know the competition. Who are you talking or fighting against? Their strengths and weaknesses. That's secondary research. That's easy enough to do. You do that in the campaigns course. You do that all the time. But again, too many marketers say, well, we know that our competition is so, those 4 companies. But have you really looked at the market? Do you know who the other startups are, the newcomers? Do you understand why they're your competition? Do you know how old their products are? Do you know what they're developing as new products? If not, you need to be talking to your salespeople. You need to be doing secondary research. You need to be going to trade shows as a marketer and walking to their booths and seeing what they have and what they're selling. You need to gather information. Why? Because you are the number one leader in your company. You are the key marketer. So you're going to develop the program just like Caesar did, and you're going to lead the company. You're going to make sure that sales does not have different objectives than you do. Too often, sales will say, great program, really like it, but we're going to continue going after these accounts the way we always have. Yeah, thank you very much. And oh, by the way, I like what you're selling there, but my customers don't want that. I'm going to sell them what I always sell them. That's the disconnect that you and your senior management has to say, one campaign, one route for this company to go, and we're all going to sing off the same page. So let's look at the second question. What will it take for me to do this? What will it take? Those of you who have graduated and put together 636 campaigns or in the real world and have done the same thing but larger and continuing, you understand the magnitude of this question, what it could be. Well, first of all, the leaders who did this, they understood what their arsenal was. When Eisenhower was putting together the D-Day plan, he understood all of his armament. He knew what his Navy was capable of. He understood the size of guns in his artillery. He knew how many infantry he had and how well trained they were and in which battalions. He also understood where the spies were, how many were in France, Belgium, how many were in Germany. And he had understood the resistance network and what he could count on there. He understood his Air Force, the paratroopers. Every tool that he had available, he knew what it was capable of, and what the shortcomings were. These leaders planned. They planned meticulously. If you're going to write something down, write down meticulous planning. They understood the battlefield. They understood the terrain, because quite often terrain will cause a defeat if you don't know that you're running and charging uphill and the enemy has a favored position shooting down on you. So you have to understand what's going on. They relied on scouts, on spies. You rely on research. And they calculated the odds, and they said, given all of these factors, the strengths and weaknesses of my arsenal, what are my best odds? How am I going to put this together? And then they set the strategy, and the strategy was aligned to these specific objectives. They defined the sequence of the strategies and the sequence of the objectives and the tactics. So they orchestrated everything so that they were using the right tools at the right time, by design, not by accident, to create synergy. And the tactics built on each other. Really important to let the tactics build on each other. Let me give you a detailed example. I'll try to make this one quick. D-Day. We're celebrating D-Day next week on June 6th. I don't know how many of you really understand what took place that day or how it took place, but let me recap it real quickly. The first thing the Allies did is they managed a deception program behind the Axis lines. They had spies sending out false information behind the lines to misdirect the Germans, the Axis, into thinking that the Allies were going to invade at Calais, which was further north than Normandy. And that's what they were sending out to try to misdirect, all of the support away from where they were landing. So that was the first thing they did. Second thing they did, on the night of June 6th, they sent silent gliders and paratroopers to fly in the dead of night, to land behind enemy lines, to take out all the communication lines, to blow up bridges, and to generally disrupt the flow of support for the Germans so that additional support could not come and reinforce the Normandy beaches. Thirdly, at the prescribed hour, and this is really critical because it shows the importance of sequencing. At the prescribed hour, the naval bombardment of the coast took place. And why did they do that? They pummeled that coast for hours to soften the resistance, to take out as much resistance as possible before they sent the next step, sent the infantry to take hold on the beaches. Once they took hold of the beaches and on the way they were doing that, they said the beach is going to be broken into 5 parts. The Americans are going to take these 3, and the Britons are going to take those 2 beaches. That's how we're going to deploy the manpower. Very sequenced, tactic after tactic after tactic. Once they got the foothold and they expanded to where the red line is, the very next thing they did is, instead of going east to Germany or south into France, they went northwest. They actually went up, I don't know if this thing doesn't point, in the very top corner to Cherbourg. Why would they land in Normandy and go all the way up to Cherbourg? By taking that peninsula and Cherbourg was the closest deep water port to the invasion. By taking that, all of a sudden the Allies could bring their big ships, their supply ships, right into port, offload munitions, support more infantry to help feed the invasion. So it was a very laid out tactical plan. So what does that mean for us? What can we learn from this whole thing? You need to know your tools. Sure, we all understand direct marketing and what it is, and email. Direct marketing is now old school compared to email, but it's coming back because it's effective. Television advertising, what kind of television? It could be just regular commercials, it could be infomercials, radio, social media. It's not just understanding what tools are available to you, but it's understanding the power and the shortcomings of each tool. How well do you really understand each of these and what it's capable of delivering for you when used properly? More importantly, as master IMC practitioners, you need to know more than this. You need to understand everything that's out there and available to you. Everything from point of sale and billboards and webinars and web pages and public speaking and publicity, publishing, ebooks. All of those are tools that are available for you that you can pull into your arsenal. So just as they did, you need to create plans with purpose. So you have objectives and you develop the tactics that support those objectives. What's required to meet that objective? You have a strategy to get it. What's going to be required? And I'll show you an example of how this plays out. Use the most cost-effective and efficient tactics. What I see a lot of, and what I've seen a lot of, is marketers and quite often sales managers who also serve as marketers, or worse yet, senior executives who say, I want to go on television. We need to be on television. We need to make a statement, make a real impact in the marketplace. This is the way to do it. Or they'll say, you know, our competition's got this web page and they're on that Twitter thing. We need to do that too. Go ahead and set us up. But without understanding why or what the whole purpose is, what you want to accomplish. A good marketer will leverage planning tools. Caesar didn't have planning tools. He did it all in his head, and he did it with his generals. But you have wonderful planning tools out there. I think Paul mentioned a couple as well, but even something as simple as MS Project, where you can take your objectives, break them down into step by step by step by step in excruciating detail. And then you orchestrate the proper sequence. So you attack the market systematically, just like Eisenhower did when he attacked Normandy. You know, everything followed. The tactics built on each other. Know the specifics of each tactic and link them. So talking about generating synergy, this is one of the examples of how you generate synergy. When we were doing direct mail at IBM, we would send out a package, a well-developed package, and we would get a 3% response rate. And then we found out that if we took the names of the responders out and sent the same package again a few weeks later, we got another 3% response rate from the same names, the same package. So here's a way to generate some synergy. What was really effective, and this is what you need to start understanding about your tactics, what kicked up our performance even better is when we did that direct mail package and we had spent the time in training and had a telemarketing follow-up team ready to handle the responses. People who responded to the 800 number that took them to well-trained telemarketing. We went from a 2% to an 8% conversion rate, because those two tactics have synergy when they work together. So part of your job is to know which tactics support each other and create more than just the accumulation or the accumulation of both of them separately. Another example of that, in terms of the planning and the strategy, when we put together a direct mail package, we went and did a lot of research on our audience. And we understood what their pains were, and we developed creative that addressed their pains and their needs and motivations. And one of the needs that they had, and we were selling an ERP program. It's a master manufacturing software that plans everything from logistics through machine scheduling and sending it out, plus the billing, etc. We found out that a lot of the vice presidents that we were reaching out to really didn't know if they were ready for a new ERP program. They didn't understand it, and therefore we couldn't start talking to them until we did some pre-screening. So through our research, which is part of what IMC practitioners do, we developed a business needs analysis tool. At this time, it was a CD that we sent out. So we said, look, the sequence has to be this. We're going to run trade advertising with a coupon and an 800 number. And we're going to offer the business needs analysis tool. And the respondents will respond one way or the other. We will then send the tool out, have them fill out the questionnaire, and mail it to us or call us, and we'll send somebody out to pick it up. Based on that questionnaire, our salesperson or our telescreener can now determine whether this person is truly qualified for the solution that we have to offer. And then if they were, only then was the name passed on to a salesperson for follow-up. If they weren't, we continued nurturing them with other information, with white papers, videos, etc., until they were ready. We laid this whole thing out. We figured out how long it was going to take. More importantly, we started drilling down to understand each step of the sequence. What is the messaging going to be in the cover letter or the trade ads? And what's the graphic we're going to use? And we're going to use that in the follow-up email, and that's going to be the same graphic on the cover of the business needs analysis tool. And then we want to make sure that the telemarketing reps understood the messaging of the ad and the email. So we conducted a training session with those telemarketing reps, inbound reps, to not only show them the pieces, but explain what we're doing, what their role is, and what the next step is. So that's all about doing the linking of tactics in a way that drives specific actions. So here's the example of what I've been talking about. Very clear, very, very simple. On the left side is the outline. You set a goal, and then you identify objectives that are required to meet that goal, and then for each objective you have strategies to accomplish it. Pretty simple, right? What it looks like in real life is if your goal is to increase market share to 15%, what do you need to do? Well, the first objective is you need to improve awareness of your company and your products by 25%. The second objective is you need to increase first-time buyers. You need to conquest the competition. So you want to improve that by 30%. Your third goal may be to improve your retention rate or your resale rate to current customers by 20%. Those three things, if accomplished, will help you achieve the 15% end goal. This takes business analytics. This takes a business mind of thinking. Cindy Greenglass is going to be doing a session tomorrow on marketing math. And she's going to be talking about setting up the KPIs, key performance indicators, and how to measure and how to project to build this kind of a plan. So you may want to do that. And then you develop the strategies for each of these objectives, right? So if your awareness is, if your goal is to have an increase of 25% awareness, okay, we're going to leverage broadcast television and radio, or broadcast media. We're going to mobilize AR and PR, analyst relations and public relations. And then thirdly, we're going to create a strong social media presence. Within each of those strategies is where you start identifying which tactics are best going to help you achieve that strategy. So the mobilize AR and PR. When I worked at IBM in a startup organization, it was called Emerging Business Opportunity, about 14 years ago, we were focusing on wireless and broadband. This is before wireless was available at every building everywhere in the country. This was a brand new thing. We said, how are we going to get the word out that IBM has key solutions to help the marketer, to help companies establish and create Wi-Fi stations and broadband? Given the very, very limited funds that we had, our strategy was to secure as many keynote presentations for our vice president as possible within a 12-month period. We identified the 15 major wireless events globally, and we invested in purchasing a keynote opportunity. Maybe it's $20,000, maybe it's $25,000. But that was our primary way of getting the word out. Putting our top executive there, talking about what we had. When we were at the event, our analyst relations person set up meetings with all the trade analysts with our vice president. They started getting the word out on our behalf. And then we also did the PR and did interviews with trade media and the local media. That was a very, very strong effort on our part that saved us a lot of money because we didn't have to do advertising. But that's how we achieved an awareness objective. So all of you have seen or created this kind of a chart. Why? Well, a couple reasons. One, you need to visually understand what's going to happen when and what you can leverage at what time, what's going to lead into what tactic and when, how much lead time do you need to get that set up properly, who do you need to talk to make sure they're prepared to handle the responses, and to say, what's missing here? I've got 3 tactics. Is that enough to drive the kind of response and the numbers that I need to hit in order to make it happen? So, detailed plans. Boy, your job as an IMC executive is to lead your customer. Lead him through steps. And in complicated and very advanced IMC plans, you're going to be able to identify which customers are in which stage of the buy cycle, and you're going to have material or activities that are primed to address his needs at that stage of the buy cycle. In very simple programs, if you're just getting started, you're not going to have that, but you are going to want to plan. If I send out an ad, if I send out an email or direct mail, what do I want this person to do? Where do I want him to go? How do I want him to respond? Do I want him to call? Do I want him to go to a web page, clip a coupon, visit the local dealer? Each of those activities, once you decide what it is, you need to be prepared for that person to come in, call, send in, etc. Which means you need to do training. You need to have that next tactic ready and thought out. If you're sending them to a web page, which is the common activity today, is your web page consistent with the messaging that you sent out in your email or however you drove that person there? Can he recognize that this is the same messaging, the same image, the same look? And by the way, where do I go to find that information they talked about in the letter or the email that I got? And what do I do now? Do I fill out a form? Where does that form go? That form goes to whom? A follow-up telemarketer? Is it going to go directly to a salesperson? How are you going to monitor what's happening with those names? Because that's your job. It's your job to monitor and have step-by-step planned out to know if everything is working properly. So in my view, based on my career, there are two kinds of marketing programs. Those that create awareness and those that make something happen. A lot of people who come from a major agency background, advertising agency background, are very satisfied to create awareness in the marketplace. And they'll encourage you to spend millions of dollars to create awareness to get your message out. But by the way, there's no link for them to go to, there's no call to action, because that's not part of what they're doing. I've learned over the years, I've moved from PR, where I had my accreditation and it was all awareness and getting messages out. Over the years, I learned that the best thing to do is create results, measurable results. So you can do advertising. The advertising can have a call to action. It can create awareness, but have a call to action. You need to be leading your customers everywhere you want to go. Your tactics should have a very clear call to action with a place to go or something to get, and then you should have the follow-up tactics set up accordingly. I have a key destination. Paul talked about KPIs. Everybody understand? Key performance indicators. He gave a couple great charts. I'm going to go and download those, the tables that showed you the kind of performance indicators for the kind of activities you have. You as an IMC practitioner should understand what your KPIs are for each type of tactic you do. You should understand what your reach and frequency is for radio, your reach and frequency for television, your number of impressions for magazines, your response rate for direct marketing, your open and click-through rate for email. You should understand what the right measurements are for each of those. When designing a plan, you need to set KPIs before you launch the tactic. What do we mean? What's your goal? If you're sending out 300,000 emails to drive some kind of response, what's your anticipated open rate or response rate? 3%? Was it 9,000? So you need to know what volume to anticipate. Are you prepared to handle that volume? And you need to know when it's going to come. You know that with direct mail, it's a bell curve that starts hitting about 3 to 4 days after the mail drops. And it'll peak about a week to 2 weeks later, and then it'll start tailing off. You need to understand and be on top of the KPIs every day. As an IMC practitioner, maniacal attention to KPIs has got to be your mantra. You need to know by day 4, are you on track? Day 5, if you're not on track, you need to be calling and say, did all the mail get out? Did all of it get delivered? Are we having any troubles with the phone, inbound phones? Are we having any troubles with people responding? You need to know why you're not getting the numbers that you projected. And by day 7, if you're not there, if you're not getting it, then you stop the next tactic. You stop the next round of email, and you figure out why it's not working before you spend more money sending the same thing out a second time. Because maybe it's the message, maybe it's the offer, maybe it's not being delivered. It's your job to figure out what it is. I talked about having a lead management plan, having the follow-on tactics. It's thinking things through step by step by step all the way down and knowing where you're driving the customer, what you want the customer to do, understanding that you've got things set up properly to manage that, and then where's the next step? How are we going to nurture that person? How are we going to hand it to the salesperson? When I was at IBM, and before that I was with R.L. Polk doing automotive marketing, as an IMC manager, as a managing director, I spent 90% of my time managing KPIs, setting them, and managing performance. Only 10% of my job was creative development and messaging, message analysis, and coming up with offers. Everything else was attention to detail and knowing what I wanted to get out of this and being able to track it day by day. This is what a well-planned campaign should look like. A spaghetti chart. If you haven't created a spaghetti chart for one of your campaigns, then you're not thinking through all of your options, all of the steps. If you're going to be driving a response that's a yes or no. If it's yes, what are you going to do with it? Who are you going to give it to? And what if they say yes or no at that point? Are you going to send them an email, or are you going to send them a follow-up brochure or a white paper? And then what are you going to do? You need to put through a complete decision tree, understanding where you're leading your client, what you want him or her to do at that stage, and what are the options, so that you can track every step of the way. If this scares you, it should. It should. It's scary to put together. And I have done many of these. But you know what? Doing this saved us hundreds of thousands of dollars, because as we went through this practice, we started uncovering holes in our plan. We started uncovering where we could lose responses and not follow up properly. And we actually held a couple programs an extra week until we got proper training done in place to make sure that when responders responded and were passed on, those people were ready to handle them. That's what this kind of planning does. So, third question. There's more? What's the best way to do this? Well, these generals, these leaders, they gave clear, direct orders. They were rigorous in the execution, and they were disciplined in deployment. I encourage you to write down those two phrases, because that's really the heart of what we're trying to do and talk about here today. You need to be rigorous in the execution and disciplined in your deployment. They communicated. These generals were constantly communicating with their forces wherever they were. They were getting feedback, constant feedback. They knew if resistance proved to be more difficult over here than it was over there, and if he needed to move and adjust and send other support there. They assessed their progress very quickly. What was working, what wasn't, and they took it. And they also understood that no battle plan ever survived contact with the enemy. How many of you have heard that before? Yeah. No battle plan ever survived contact with the enemy. What that means is, as soon as that contact or that tactic gets out in the field, something can go wrong. And usually it's something you haven't thought about. We learn lessons in life. And those lessons stay with us for years, especially lessons about really being maniacal about detailed planning. I'll share one of my early ones with you. Early in my career, I was a public relations director of communications for a major board of realtors. And I had degrees in advertising and PR. Had to set up this meeting for about 500 people. I wrote the agenda out for our president to use, had the microphone there. I got there an hour and a half early, checked the mic, make sure it was working, the tables, made sure the coffee was set up, make sure that we had a camera to take pictures of the thing and document it. It was a vote, so we had ballots on every table. I sat and walked through this whole thing, and step by step, from the time that I walked in the door and said, okay, where am I going? Oh, we need a sign at the front door to direct people this way, just like the integrate signs on the doors here. And sign-in table. What do we have at the sign-in table? We need a list of registrants. We need badges. We need names, markers. You know, it's step by step, right? I thought I had everything covered until the president calls the meeting to order. He says, welcome everybody. First thing we're going to do is we're going to start with a Pledge of Allegiance. Duane, where's the flag? That was one of my embarrassing moments. Never happened again. But that's how we learn. But that's the kind of attention to detail that you as IMC marketers need to be paying to every tactic that you do. Think through every single variable. So, for you, work the plan. You've developed the plan, work it, stick to it, adjust only when you need to. Deploy the tactics in sequence as timed so that they have a chance to work. Sometimes, as we know, direct mail takes 7 to 14 days to hit the market, to sit on somebody's desk, to get opened, and to finally start responding. Email, a day or two and you know whether it's worked or not. Again, maniacally focus on the details and anticipate problems. Communicate. You are the leader of this program. You need to communicate with everyone else in the company so they understand not only what you have planned, but how it's working. It's your job to keep the president, the vice president of marketing, vice president of sales, and the branches, the sales managers, completely informed on how the program's going, what's working and what's not. You need to be transparent on that. The first session this morning talked about measuring results, keeping, being fanatic about your KPIs, understanding what your expectations are, understand it, have them set up ahead of time. And I know that's one of the things that we as IMC marketers really don't like to do, is sit there and do projections on emails, projections on direct mail, projections on radio advertising and responses. But it's a business. Your company is investing money for results. If you can't prove those results, if you can't plan to deliver those results, then you shouldn't be managing the money, in my opinion. Get real-time feedback, adapt to change, establish the required levels of success. That's why I said part of your KPIs will help you determine if a program's a success or not. There are many times in my career where we didn't have the proper KPIs, and I thought we did a great job on the direct mail. My boss came in and said, well, that was crap. We sure didn't get anything out of that, did we? I said, well, we exceeded what we thought we were going to. No, I thought we were going to have twice as many. So obviously, we did not lock in on what was an acceptable and expected response rate. Stop the tactics that aren't working, save yourself the money, adjust, and reallocate the funds. Why? Because in the end, doing this with the rigor and discipline that I've been talking about will create campaigns that allow you to generate buzz, but more importantly, to generate measurable results. Your campaigns will now be fully integrated and with tactics that build on each other. Instead of throwing a lot out there, you're going to have one build on the other and create the synergy that is going to give you what you need. More importantly, you as a marketer will start developing the rigor and the discipline for your programs that will ensure continued success. Management will start believing in IMC because they'll start seeing results. And lastly, your reputation as a marketer will be enhanced and continue to grow. You'll be more marketable and more opportunities for your career. So in summary, integrated marketing is more than just having the same message, look, color, logo on all of your pieces. Much, much more than that. It's creating synergy through a very, very detailed plan that you follow maniacally. Using the military approach of a systematic course of aggressive activities towards a specific objective. That's how you build a campaign. And the easy way to do that is use the 3 questions that these leaders did. What am I trying to achieve? What do I need to do to get there? And what's the best way to do it? Any questions? Does it make sense? Yeah. Are you doing it? No. Are you kind of doing it? So give me some feedback. What did you see or hear that really resonated with where you are right now? For those of you who are out in the field, please.
I thought the military example was really interesting because I always blame the military on our siloed organization.
Really?
Yeah. Because, I mean, when you think about a lot of big businesses, there were people coming out of the military into big business.
Uh-huh.
So I always felt like they were set up similar to the military, and then they don't always talk. So I thought it was great to see, obviously we need to talk, but that in that example they did. So I thought it was interesting.
Good, thank you. Yeah.
Well, I've been in the military for 9 years, so I can find a lot of correlations, but I also think that I do public affairs for the military.
Okay.
So we're very limited in scope, so I think there's good things to draw from the comparison, but that marketing is also thinking outside of the box and not being defined by your parameters so strictly.
Yeah, so there's a lot to be learned from the military in terms of discipline, but integrated marketing also requires us thinking out of the box. That's what you do when you determine what tactic is going to work best for the strategy. The discipline is, what am I trying to achieve and what's the best way for me to get there?
Wasn't the D-Day invasion actually postponed because of the weather?
Yes.
So that's another thing we can take away from this is, the best laid plans of mice and men can also affect your marketing plans, so you need to be able to adjust accordingly.
Exactly. D-Day was delayed because of a weather forecast, and they pushed it off a week until they had the first clear night. So you have to take everything into consideration. Well,
I think a good thing from the presentation was the focus on the planning, because it's so tempting to fall into the technology. And
yeah.
especially if you're looking from the creative side and you're looking at the technology and it's the, oh, whiz bang this, we could do that. But bottom line, does that drive results for the client?
Yep.
And I think we can tend to lose focus if we don't have the campaign plan like that.
Exactly. What Grant said is what he liked from the presentation was the discipline of the planning, because it's very easy to get caught up in social media and we can do this, this, and this, and you get excited about all this creative, and you can really get taken off track very quickly and lose sight of what it is you're trying to accomplish. When you have a solid plan with solid objectives, you can take that excitement and say, is this going to do what we need it to do? Yeah. Other comments, questions? Yes?
Two things. This helped me a lot because I do have a habit of going right to the tactics, because that's along the lines that I think before thinking about the goals and objectives.
Yeah.
And also because
That's the fun part.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Because the spaghetti example and way of marketing scared me so much, are there areas that we can find an example of that for someone that's on the periphery of marketing that really wants to learn more?
Yeah, there are examples of the spaghetti chart that you can use. Quite frankly, there probably are. I got that one up off the web. It wasn't a pure marketing campaign, but it was detailed enough for you to do it. I think it's a matter of you asking questions of yourself. What do I want them to do? I want them to go here. When they go here, what are the options? Can they do this or can they do that? And if they do that, what am I going to do next? How am I going to follow up? Who's going to follow up? Well, if they're going to follow up, how am I going to train them? And all of a sudden you have a box that says, oops, I got to put training in here. And you start fleshing out the whole thing. This is where Microsoft Project is a really good tool for doing that, because you can have a tactic, and then under the tactic you can have all these additional steps, pre, post, and during, that will help you think through every aspect. Writing the copy, doing the layout. Is the 800 number set up? By the way, how many lines do we have? How many operators? Is it open after 8 o'clock at night? My gosh, I never thought about checking that. I'll have to call from home tonight to make sure the phone's covered. How late is it covered? Those are the kind of details that you as a marketer really need to have your hands on. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay. Other questions, comments? Please.
So it seems to me, especially with the rate of change right now, and especially in the marketing and the creative space, that collaboration is almost reached today to a fault.
Yep.
And I like the fact that you came back to how imperative it is to have strong leadership. And and a lot of the stuff, the success of it, I think, depends on one great leader sort of leading the charge.
Exactly, and part of that is making sure that your goal is bought into by senior management. And once you get that agreed from the whole senior management, then you develop the plan and say, here's how we're going to get it. But you need to keep everyone involved. You can create the plan, but then you need to get individual buy-in, get feedback, and then make sure everybody's on the same page. Thank you. Other comments?
How do you state that goal?
How do you,
State the goal to them. Do you state it in terms of something that's measurable? We're going to increase sales by X percent.
yeah, how do you state the goal to whom?
Management.
To senior management. And those goals should be co-developed with senior management, or maybe senior management is giving you that goal.
Okay.
They may say, look, we need marketing to help us attain a 15% market share. That's what we need marketing to do this year. Your plan is to help drive leads to sales to help hit that. But you need to understand, is that what it is? Is my job to drive leads? Is that what you're expecting in marketing? So that's the kind of conversation you have to have up front before you can set those objectives. Does that help? Other questions, comments? Thank you very much for listening. I hope this is helpful. Thank you.